South Africa is a nation of 55.91 million people that is geographically situated at the southern tip of Africa. South Africa's geopolitical considerations and power projection are dictated by her practical reality. This results in a foreign policy that is constrained by the dialectical tension between principle and pragmatism. That is to say, it is what emerges from between the warring realms of what is and what ought to be. This tension is informed by a present that is generated by a paradoxical historical context, in that South Africa has inherited from the colonial and apartheid socio-economic order a hegemonic position of economic dominance in the African context, while still having an internal system of socio-economic order structurally based on a racial and class hierarchy that is premised on a trichotomous economic structure. The first, or formal economy, is a globally positioned, capital-intensive and sophisticated economy whose dominance is rooted in inter- and intranational economic connections built during the colonial and apartheid past, and strengthened over the Rainbow Nation era. The second, or informal economy, is not well positioned regionally or globally, nor is it well connected to the internal formal economy, and it is comprised of subsistence activities and informal trading. The third, or illicit economy, is globally positioned, capital intensive, and its economic connections are woven across the formal and informal economies. The colonial and apartheid historical context, together with the trichotomous economic structure, work in producing the triple challenge of high inequality, high unemployment, and high poverty. South Africa's Gini coefficient, which represents the income or wealth distribution of a given population, wherein the higher the number, the more unequal the income or wealth distribution, was above 0.6 in 2015. Statistics South Africa, in their examination of poverty trends between 2006 and 2015, found that when a poverty line of 992 Rand per person per month was applied, there were 30.4 million people living in poverty in 2015. The official unemployment rate in the first quarter of 2018 is 26.7%, of which 60% of those unemployed had not had a job for more than a year, and at the provincial level, 7 out of the 9 provinces experienced rising unemployment rates. However, the top 10 South African corporations had a combined revenue of $75 billion in 2017 and operated in notable areas such as telecommunications, petrochemicals, food retail, banking and investment services, insurance, manufacturing, and even mining. Gross domestic product was about $280 billion in 2017, and it ranked 31st when ranked according to purchasing power parity. The issue of land reform in South Africa is a contentious issue both regionally and globally. Currently, the land reform policy is undertaken through 4 vehicles, namely restitution, redistribution, tenure reform, and structured support for previously disadvantaged farmers. The current political debate is on whether to fundamentally alter the economic structure of South Africa through the expropriation of land without compensation so that its ownership is vested within the South African state and owned collectively. The hegemonic position of South Africa invariably means that the internal politics take place within regional and global geopolitical contexts. Thus, for example, the land question in South Africa is fundamentally connected to the land question in Namibia, and it provokes the production of militarized right-wing propaganda in Western countries such as Belgium and Canada. The tension between pragmatism and principle in South African foreign policy is informed by these intrinsic historical contradictions and can be best exhibited in the notion of quiet diplomacy, which, while undertaken on revolutionary principle, facilitated the penetration and capture of a large share of the internal markets of Zimbabwe by South African corporate and financial power. The acknowledgement of the intrinsic link between South Africa and Africa as a fundamental organizational principle of foreign policy is an entrenched position of the South African government. The South African government uses a methodology of bi- and multilateral international relations that utilizes a functional and strategic integration approach to development, and which takes the form of customs unions, spatial development initiatives, membership in regional and global bodies, and being signatory to treaties and agreements. To this end, South Africa is an important member of the African Union, with the former Foreign and Home Affairs Minister Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma serving as the first woman chairperson of the African Union Commission. South Africa is also part of the Southern African Customs Union, SACU, which was established in 1910 but is today governed by the SACU Agreement of 2002, that is between the Republic of Botswana, the Kingdom of Lesotho, the Republic of Namibia, the Republic of South Africa, and the Kingdom of Swaziland. South Africa is also a member of the Southern African Development Community, and along with 50 other African states, is signatory to the treaty establishing the African Economic Community, which facilitates intra-African cooperation on economic development. Since the advent of democracy in South Africa, the South African National Defence Force has mounted a number of peacekeeping operations such as, inter alia, Operations Mistral, which deployed in the Democratic Republic of Congo under the banner of the UN, Operation Espresso, which deployed under a UN banner after the OAU brokered a ceasefire between Eritrea and Ethiopia, and Operation Fiber, which initially deployed in Burundi on a bilateral basis that later evolved into a multilateral UN and AU mission. The tension between pragmatism and principle is based on the history of the struggle against apartheid, which often produced unparalleled politics of principle and a desire to embody hegemonic power developmentally rather than exploitatively. However, that same hegemonic position also requires the need to act pragmatically in order to secure the national economic interest, whether through corporate and capital penetration, or the application of military power bilaterally or under the banner of a multilateral security framework.